The twin suns of Varian Prime were high in the sky, burning bright above the great city of Zevakur, where towers of glass and light reached into the clouds and ships flew silently between floating buildings in clean paths shaped by invisible waves. In rules inside the Grand Hall of Unity, the Galactic Council gathered in silence, watching as the ambassador from Earth stood at the center of the room, his hands at his sides, and his voice calm, but strong as he spoke of peace, respect, and cooperation. Between species from many stars, Daniel Reeve was not a warrior, not a spy, not a man of anger or fear. He wore no armor and carried no weapon, only his earth-blue robe marked with silver stars that represented Earth's home system and the hopes of its people. Aliens of all shapes and sizes filled the chamber, their eyes on the human standing alone in front of them. Some were tall with scaled skin and glowing horns, others were short with wide eyes and soft fur, some looked like walking stones, others like shadows holding shape with only will and gravity. Still, Reeve stood tall and spoke with pride, his voice reaching every ear in the room. Thanks to the translators floating above the seats, he told them about the first time Earth heard the stars speak back, how humans looked up and found friends in the dark, how they chose peace over power and trust over fear. He spoke about trade and shared science, about healing machines grown from crystals and engines powered by light pulled from space itself. He told stories of Earth cities floating in the sky, of underwater farms, of children learning 3 languages before the age of 5. He was not there to ask for help or favors. He was there to offer partnership. And then it happened. The lights in the hall flickered once, then twice, then turned blood red as a loud warning sound filled the air. It was the sound of emergency, the sound of danger and chaos in a place where such things were not meant to exist before anyone could move. The doors slammed open and 12 armed guards marched in, their armor black and sharp like knives cut from night, their steps loud and hard against the floor, their weapons humming with silent threat. They were not human, they were from the Talari Empire, one of the oldest and strongest powers in the galaxy, known for its cold logic and sharp justice. They served the Council, but answered only to their own code. Without a word, they surrounded Reeve, their faces hidden behind dark visors. They raised their weapons not to fire, but to show control and dominance. Reeve looked confused, but calm. He raised one hand slowly and opened his mouth to speak, but before he could say anything, 2 of the guards grabbed him and pushed him to his knees. The chamber exploded with noise, voices shouting in a dozen languages, council members standing, pointing, some screaming for order, some demanding answers, some watching in silent shock. Reeve was silent. He looked up, his face filled with calm confusion, not fear. His hands were pulled behind his back and locked in heavy metal cuffs that shimmered with strange energy. He asked once, and only once, what was happening and why they were doing this, but the guards did not answer. They lifted him to his feet and began to drag him toward the doors. Some members of the council tried to stop them, but were held back by invisible walls raised by the Talari to keep order or to hide shame. No one could tell. In a matter of minutes, the ambassador of Earth, the man who came in peace, was gone, taken from the center of the hall by force and silence. The human staff present in the chamber stood frozen, unable to move or speak. One of them, a young woman named Talia, tried to run after him, but was stopped by a guard who spoke one word in a sharp metallic voice. Not now. Outside the hall, a sleek black ship waited with no flags, no symbols, no name. It opened like the mouth of a silent beast and swallowed Reeve inside. It was gone, vanishing into the sky faster than the eye could follow, leaving behind only questions and fear. On Earth, no one knew what had happened, yet the live feed from the council chamber cut off seconds before the arrest. The last image sent back was of Reeve standing alone in red light, his face calm, his fate unknown, in the command center of Earth's diplomatic fleet. A warning light blinked on a small screen. It was not loud or urgent, just a soft yellow glow that meant one thing: connection lost. General Serena Cole stood in silence, looking at the screen, her eyes sharp and cold as steel. She was not a diplomat, not a talker. She was a soldier, a protector of Earth and its people, and she did not like mysteries. She ordered her team to trace the ambassador's signal, to check all communication paths, to reach out to every ship and station near Varian Prime. But every message came back the same: no signal, no trace, no word. The ambassador was gone. On the council world, rumors spread like fire. Some said Reeve was taken for a crime against the stars. Some said he had uncovered a secret too dangerous to live with. Others said nothing at all, afraid to speak the truth if it meant war. But Earth did not wait for rumors. The message came fast and clear from General Cole to the Galactic Council. A simple question, where is our manned council, answered days later with silence and shadows. They claimed Reeve had left by choice, that there was no arrest, that he had returned to Earth or gone off to explore other worlds. But Earth knew better. Hidden cameras from merchant ships showed a different story, a blurry image of a man in chains being led through the halls of a ship, with no flag, no name, no mercy. Earth's leaders met in secret deep underground under the old city where wars were once planned and peace was once broken. They looked at the image again and knew one thing: Daniel Reeve was not free. He was taken by force, without cause or trial, without warning or charge, and the galaxy had done nothing to stop it. Earth had been silent for years, playing the part of the peaceful neighbor, sharing knowledge, giving aid, sending their best and brightest to help build a better galaxy. But silence has its limits, and someone had just crossed the line. In the black cold of space, a storm was starting to rise, a storm with no wind and no rain, only fire, steel, and human rage. And as the stars watched and the darkness waited, Earth began to move, not with words, but with purpose. Across the quiet blue skies of Earth, the people went about their lives, unaware that their voice among the stars had just been silenced in chains, while children played and workers moved through cities of glass and metal. A quiet signal blinked in a command center buried under a mountain in North America, its soft yellow pulse unnoticed by most, but not by General Serena Cole. She stood in the main chamber, surrounded by high screens, maps of stars, and silent faces. The yellow light meant one thing: the diplomatic channel had gone dark. Something had broken the signal between Earth and their ambassador in the Galactic Council, a signal that never failed, a signal that Daniel Reeve wore at all times on his robes, stitched into the very fabric so small it could not be seen by the eye, but always online, always beating like a second heart. Now it was dead. The room was silent as Cole stepped forward, her boots firm against the cold steel floor, her voice sharp as she ordered the room into action. Scramble all near space stations, scan every jump path between Varian Prime and Council Zone, check smuggler routes, search comm buoys, ping all trade relays, force contact with any ship in that sector. I want eyes on this now. As her team raced to follow orders, dozens of screens lit up, messages flew into space, searching, calling, begging for any whisper of the ambassador's location, but the stars gave no answers. Then one screen blinked to life, a data stream from a trader vessel named Gray Vulture, flagged as unimportant by the Council, marked low security, and never checked by patrols. This was the kind of ship that survived by hiding in shadows and selling secrets for credits. Its captain, a one-eyed creature named Kelton, who trusted no one but loved stories of war and fear. The ship had passed near Council Hall that day, its cameras set to scan for rare minerals. By accident or by luck, one of them had caught a moment, a glimpse, a sliver of truth. Reeve, surrounded by black armored guards, being pushed into a silent, unmarked ship, his face clear, his hands behind his back, the glow of shackles on his wrists, the fear in the eyes of the council members. In the background, the feed played on a loop over and over in the command center. No sound, just light and shadow, but the meaning was clear. Daniel Reeve had been taken. No crime, no trial, no charge, no message, just force and silence. Cole watched the loop without blinking, her hands behind her back, her face unreadable, but inside her a storm began to rise, not of fear, but of purpose. She turned to her lead analyst and gave the next order: find out where they took him, search for black ships with no code, match engine trails, cross-reference guard movement patterns, check tolerate prison sectors, pull records from known shadow cells. Start with Red Cell 9. That's where they put people who were never meant to be found. Her team moved like fire down wires into space through systems and networks built across decades. They searched dark data, ignored frequencies, and locked records, and they're hidden in a back channel used only by the Tolerant Enforcement Wing. They found something, a fragment of a message not meant to be seen, not meant to survive. Subject transfer confirmed. Red Cell 9 priority: hold non-native threat, maintain silence, per directive code. Gray Level 5 Origin Council order signed by unknown. That was all, but it was enough. Red Cell 9 was real, and Reeve was inside. General Cole called a private meeting with the Prime Authority of Earth, the 12 leaders who watched from every continent, their faces cold and distant across digital lines. She showed them the clip, the council room, the arrest, the black ship, the prison order. Then she spoke calm and clear. This was not a mistake. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a message, a test. They wanted to see if we would stay quiet. They wanted to see if Earth still had a spine. The authority did not speak right away. They knew what this meant if they moved. Now if they pushed back, the peace held for years would break like glass. But if they stayed silent, then Earth would never again stand tall in the eyes of the stars. After long silence, they gave the answer with one word. Proceed. Cole nodded and walked away to begin the work of wrath. In the hangars below, the mountain lights came on. Ships powered by dark matter engines hummed to life. Armor suits were cleaned and weapons checked. Names were called. Not many, only 12 from every edge of Earth's armed forces. 12 who had seen fire and walked back. 12 who never failed. Strike Team Omega. They were ghosts in battle, stars in the dark, each one trained for missions. No one spoke about missions that left nothing behind but victory or ash. At their head stood Commander Elias Nash, a man with a quiet voice and sharp eyes. His past a list of battles and medals, his future shaped by duty alone. He listened to the mission brief with no questions. Infiltrate Red Cell 9, retrieve Ambassador Reeve by any means necessary, extract safely, avoid detection if possible, but complete the mission at all cost. He nodded once, then turned to his team. Prepare to leave in 6 hours. Dark gear only, no trace, no signal. This mission is off book. Earth never asked. We were never there. The team moved with silent precision, preparing tools and armor suits that bent light and masked heat, shields built to walk through energy nets without a sound, weapons coded to their heartbeat, impossible to use by anyone else. Their ship, the Ghostborn, launched under the cover of night, leaving Earth with no ceremony, no fanfare, just a silent promise that they were coming. As they crossed systems in silence, the stars seemed to whisper in fear. Something ancient, something fierce was moving again, something the galaxy had forgotten. Earth had always been kind, generous, even humble, offering trade, knowledge, aid, but now one of their own had been taken without cause, and Earth was not a planet that let harm pass without reply. Back on the Council, world news of the arrest was already being twisted. The Council claimed Reeve had left to explore ancient ruins on the edge of known space. Some members spoke to media in hushed tones, saying Earth had overreacted, that this was a misunderstanding, but the truth moved faster than their lies. Footage leaked, more footage from different angles. Reeve shouting, asking why, being dragged past alien envoys who turned their heads in shame. Whispers grew louder on the networks among smugglers, mercenaries, traders, and soldiers. Something was coming, something cold and fast and human. And in the silence of Red Cell 9, deep inside a dead moon circling a forgotten world, Daniel Reeve sat in a small gray cell, his body bruised but his mind sharp. He listened to the guards moving outside, heard the hum of the walls, felt the weight of the chains, but his heart beat steady. He was not alone. He knew Earth would come, not because he was important, not because he had power or wealth or fame, but because he was one of them, and Earth always came for its own. That was the promise, that was the truth, and that was the fire waiting in the dark. The Galactic Council sat high above the clouds of Varian Prime, its towers wrapped in golden rings of energy, its halls filled with the voices of 1,000 species speaking in harmony, or so the galaxy believed. For many years it had stood as a symbol of unity, peace, progress. But peace is fragile, and unity is often a mask for fear and silence. In the great circle chamber where the council met, the air was thick with quiet tension. Words were spoken in careful tones, faces remained still. No one spoke of what had happened to the ambassador from Earth. No one dared to mention the black armored guards or the way Reeve had been dragged from the chamber like a criminal before the eyes of all. Instead, they spoke of trade routes, of farming moons, of resource exchanges, and new medical programs, all while the shadow of the arrest hung heavy over the room like smoke over fire. When the message from Earth arrived, demanding answers, demanding truth, the Council sent back a simple report. They claimed the ambassador had left by choice. They claimed he was visiting a distant research station to study culture and law. They claimed he had never been taken at all, but many within the chamber knew these were lies. Counselor Mail of the Renari sat still in his tall glass chair, his many eyes blinking in patterns of worry. He had seen the arrest with his own eyes. He had seen the fear in Reeve's face, the confusion, the chains. And yet now he said nothing, for speaking the truth meant standing against powers older than his race, older than his stars. Counselor Varesh of the Talari Empire, the ones who had taken Reeve, remained silent, her sharp face cold and perfect, her hands folded tightly over the crest of her house. She knew no one would dare question her. She knew fear better than most. She used it like a weapon, even as private messages began to arrive from Earth's allies, questioning the silence, asking if what they heard was true. The Council maintained their official story. Nothing Happened no crime, no arrest, no danger, but the galaxy is not blind. Far across systems and outposts and colonies, whispers moved like wind. Human traders stopped talking, human ships pulled away from border zones, human diplomats vanished from local halls. And only silence remained where once there was friendship. On Mars, the orbital listening ring caught hidden chatter from pirate channels. They heard talk of a black ship moving toward the rim, a ship with no ID hiding behind old asteroid fields guarded by strange signals and automated guns. Someone whispered that the ship carried something valuable. Others said it carried someone important. The name Red Cell 9 was spoken again and again. Earth's intelligence networks locked onto the signal and began tracing every detail. They found records of construction buried deep in old files, secret projects marked with false names. They found the location of the prison moon wrapped in storms, invisible to most scanners and defended by drones programmed to kill. Back on Varian Prime, a low-level technician in the Council's data tower made a mistake, or maybe he made a choice. He released a private log to the open system. It was short, only a few seconds long, but it showed what the Council had tried to hide: the arrest of Daniel Reeve. The video went viral in under 2 hours, spreading from back channels to major feeds, from student forums to war veteran groups. It reached Earth fast, and it changed everything. The Council called it a fake. They claimed it was edited. They said someone was trying to make war. They denied the guards were theirs. They denied the ship existed. They denied the prison was real. But denial means nothing when the galaxy is watching. Protests broke out in front of Council buildings on many planets, humans and aliens together, holding signs calling for truth and justice. News anchors debated the footage. Analysts broke down the uniforms, the ship model, the guard formation. Everything matched the Tollery style. Everything pointed to a secret arrest on Earth. The people were no longer asking what happened. They were asking when their forces would strike in the hidden war rooms of Earth's defense command. New plans were being drawn, not for war, but for clarity, for power to be shown without starting fire, a plan to move without asking, a plan to send a message without saying a word. Strike Team Omega was still in flight, moving through starless space toward the prison moon, their ship silent, their systems dark, their minds focused. Commander Nash sat in the central chair reading the new updates sent by Earth's command. He read about the Council's lies, about the protests, about the growing fear in the stars. He smiled only once and then gave the order, continue as planned. Meanwhile, deep inside Red Cell 9, Daniel Reeve sat on the edge of his bed, listening to the hum of the walls, the sound of guards pacing outside, the buzz of power lines above his head. He had been beaten during transport, questioned without words, watched without rest, but he was still himself. He remembered every detail of the prison, the layout of the halls, the sound of the footsteps, the timing of the lights, the rhythm of the doors. He counted every second. He studied every motion. He was a diplomat, not a fighter, not a soldier, but he knew that knowledge was a weapon too. When a guard entered to drop food, Reeve asked a question, not loud, not rude, just quiet and calm. Why am I here? The guard said nothing and left, but the next day a different guard came, this one older, slower, more curious. He stood outside the door and said quietly, maybe they fear what Earth will do if they tell the truth. Maybe they think silence is safer. Reeve looked at him and asked again, why was I taken? The guard looked away and whispered, because someone gave the order, someone very high, and now they cannot stop it. Without losing face, and Reeve understood. Back in the Council chamber, whispers turned into arguments. Several minor species began to question the leadership of the Council. Open letters were sent requesting a full investigation. Threats of departure from the Alliance began to rise one by one. Voices grew louder, and still the Council said nothing. Earth released a statement, simple and sharp: we do not accept this silence. We demand the return of our ambassador. We will act if action becomes necessary. The galaxy froze. No one had heard Earth speak like this in 100 years. The Council tried once more to calm the storm. They offered a meeting. They promised to search for Reeve. They promised to check Red Cell 9. But Earth did not reply. Instead, the stars around the prison moon began to flicker one by one as cloaked probes activated, scanning every inch of the area, watching the guards, watching the ships waiting in. Strike Team Omega moved closer every second. The Council had one last chance to end it, to speak the truth, to return what they had taken, to admit the wrong. But pride is a sharp thing, and fear makes fools of the wise, so they remained silent. The wrath of Earth continued to rise like fire behind a closed door, waiting only for the moment it would be opened. In the deepest part of space, where stars seemed to sleep, and even the dark had shadows, a small black ship flew, without lights, without sound. And without trace, its engines were wrapped in bending fields, its hull coated in wave-absorbing dust from the edge of a dead comet. Its name was Ghostborn, and inside it 12 soldiers prepared for the mission only Earth's highest command knew about. Strike Team Omega had no ranks, no fame, no official records. They were known only by call signs and stories whispered between old war pilots and deep space scouts, stories that spoke of missions too dangerous to speak of and victories that never made the news feeds, only rumors. And SCAR's commander, Elias Nash, sat in silence at the center of the main cabin, his armor already sealed, his visor resting by his side, his face calm, his eyes sharp, his thoughts focused on what waited ahead. The man had served through 4 planetary conflicts, 2 rebellions, and 1 event that was still marked as classified by the Earth Defense Corps, yet his record showed no glory, no interviews, no medals, only success after success, mission after mission, each one ending with quiet silence and job done. To his left sat Ghostblade, the team's stealth expert, a woman who moved like smoke through locked rooms and silent halls, her weapons light and quiet, her presence often forgotten even by her team until she spoke, which was rare. To his right sat Iron Jack, the heavy lifter, strong, silent, and steady, his armor twice as thick as the others, built for frontline brawls and powered strikes. He could carry half the team on his back and keep firing without pause. Next came Patch, the medic, with hands faster than most machines and a heart hidden behind sarcastic jokes. Then Codewire, the hacker born in low orbit who once shut down a warship with a toothpick and a power cell. Then Echo, the sniper who saw through walls and never missed, her voice quiet, her aim perfect. The rest were just as skilled, just as trusted. They had trained together, fought together, bled together, and now they moved as one, a unit not of parts, but of purpose. The ship was silent, but alive, lights low, weapons locked, systems checking and rechecking. The path ahead was marked by data stolen from 5 different council servers, patched together by Earth's best and hidden in the memory of an old merchant drone to avoid tracking. Red Cell 9 was not a place on any official map. It was not shown on star charts. It had no beacon, no trade path, no entry gate. It floated in a dead orbit around a dead world, hidden behind storms of magnetic dust and shielded by sensor scramblers that would confuse most scanners and send others in circles until their power drained. But Earth had sent Omega, and Omega did not lose. Commander Nash stood and spoke, his voice calm and clear, not loud, not soft, but steady. In 1 hour, we reach the approach zone. We will go in dark, no contact unless forced, no alarms, no noise. Our target is Daniel Reeve, alive, if possible, extraction with no trace, secondary targets only if engagement happens naturally. He looked around the cabin at each face, each soldier already ready, their armor sealed, their gear checked. No one nodded, no one spoke. They did not need to. They had done this before. They were not here to start a war. They were here to end a lie. As they moved closer to the prison moon, Nash opened the mission file again, reading the details once more, even though he knew them by heart. Red Cell 9 was built for prisoners who did not exist, guarded by machines not listed on any registry, run by people who answered to no one, the kind of place built by fear and held by silence. Inside its walls, Daniel Reeves sat in his cell watching the same gray wall he had seen for days, maybe weeks, maybe longer. Time was hard to track in a place with no windows, no clocks, only lights that flickered on and off with no pattern. He had been questioned more than once, but not with words they used. Lights and sounds, pressure and isolation, things designed to break the mind, not the body. But Reeve had spent years in diplomacy. He had sat in rooms where peace balanced on a single word. He had faced lies and threats and fear, all with a smile. So he watched, and he waited. He remembered every face, every guard, every hallway, every code flashed on a screen for half a second, every sound outside his door. He knew someone would come, not because he was special, but because he was human, and humans never left their own behind, not anymore, not after what the stars had tried before. Back on Ghostborn, the approach had begun. Codewire sat at the control panel, hands moving like water over light, his eyes locked on shifting numbers and signals there, running a double spin loop with a mirrored shield band. Old tech, but solid, will take time to cut through without pinging their wall. Commander Nash spoke. How long? Codewire replied, 20 minutes. If they don't change their spin, 10 if I skip safe checks. Nash looked at Ghostblade, and she nodded once without speaking. Take the risk, he said, then turned to the others. Lock gear, check feeds, final sync, move. On my mark. The ship began to drift closer, to not flying, but falling, pulled by false gravity. Signals masked by old satellite echoes. Everything was quiet. Everything was ready inside Red Cell 9. The guards moved with practiced steps. They had done this job for years, watching over ghosts, feeding shadows. They did not question the orders or the silence. They did not know who Reeve was, only that he was human, and humans were not to be trusted. In the main security room, one monitor flickered, then blinked, then returned to normal. No one noticed. Then another blinked, and then three more. One guard stood and checked the systems. All clear, he said. Must be dust in the sky again. The storms mess with the relays, but outside the storms were quiet. Ghostborn had landed not on a pad, not on a dock, but on the underside of the prison moon where no one looked, where no one walked, where the surface was cracked and forgotten. Hatch opened, and Omega dropped into the dust, their suits clinging to the rock, their feet silent, their movements like shadows under Shadow Commander. Nash led them through the cracks and vents using a map built from stolen data and guesswork. They moved through old tunnels left from construction days, crawling between wires and pipes, breathing recycled air and silence. When they reached the lower maintenance bay, code wire opened a panel and whispered wherein. Nash gave the signal, and the team split, moving like ink through water, covering paths. Cameras disabled, guards bypass sensors, looped. No noise, no trace, only shadows moving through metal. They reached the cell block and found the hall. Reeve was in, locked, sealed, guarded by two sentries, bored and unaware until Ironjack stepped forward and ended it without a sound. Patch opened the cell door, and Reeve looked up, his eyes calm, his body tired, his mind sharp. Took you long enough, he said with a dry smile. Commander Nash stepped in and said, "Let's go." Reeve stood and followed. No questions, no delay. He trusted the armor, he trusted the mission, he trusted the people behind the masks. As they moved back through the halls, the alarm finally triggered. Maybe a guard woke early, maybe a system blinked wrong, maybe the prison finally felt fear. Red lights filled the hallways, and voices shouted, and drones began to wake. Omega moved faster, now weapons drawn, plans ready. Not running, but fighting through smoke and fire, silent shots and fast strikes. Every corner covered, every step counted. They reached the exit point, and Ghostborn rose from the rocks like a ghost made of steel, its doors opening, its engines ready. As the team boarded, Reeve turned once and looked back at the prison, and he whispered, not to the guards, not to the walls, but to the stars, "We are never alone." Then the doors closed, and they were gone. The prison moon trembled with the sound of rising alarms as lights turned red and pathways shifted into lockdown across every level. In Red Cell 9, robotic guards activated in cold sequence, drones launched from hidden chambers, and wall turrets unfolded with silent precision, all responding to the one thing they had been built to stop: an intruder strike. Team Omega moved through it like a blade through smoke. Commander Elias Nash gave short, sharp signals with his hand, no voice, no sound, only movement, as his team carried Ambassador Reeve through narrow halls and service tunnels mapped from memory and stolen data. Their boots touched the floor with weightless steps, their gear still cloaked in blackout fields designed to bend light and mute energy echoes. But the time for silence was closing. The system knew something was wrong. Codewire was ahead, unlocking junctions, rerouting doors, disabling auto sentries. Before they could blink, online, his fingers moved across the datapad faster. Then thought sparks flew and cables hissed as he pulled power from side systems and forced open sealed walls. Ghostblade moved behind him, watching corners, covering flanks. Her rifle raised, her body pressed to every shadow like she was born of it. Ironjack carried Reeve, now the ambassador, too weak to run, but still alert, still watching every hallway, every twist in the path, his mouth silent, but his eyes sharp. Reeve knew this place better than they thought. He had studied every detail from behind bars, and now whispered the layout between breaths. Left, right, two drones above, passcode panel down the hall, third floor, breaker box. Red light means guard station. Nash moved at point, taking down one drone after another with silent shots fired from a pulse pistol that barely made a whisper echo. Held the rear, watching their trail, making sure nothing followed her. Scope locked on movement beyond steel and distance, taking shots that saved lives before danger even appeared. The halls shook again as the prison shifted into full lockdown. Overhead blast doors began to drop, walls closed around paths, and the security AI started cutting power to escape zones, trying to trap the intruders in a maze of stone and steel and plasma. But Omega was ready. They had planned for this. They had trained for worse. They had walked through drills where failure meant starting over again and again until the only outcome they accepted was success. Patch worked fast, opening a side panel and rerouting power. Through an old vent system heating the walls around it to mask their movement to the thermal grid, his suit was scorched by the time he finished, but the cameras read, "Nothing, we have 5 minutes before this hallway locks." Nash signed Codewire nodded and sprinted ahead, sliding into a service shaft and plugging into a control node buried behind a coolant pipe. He winced as sparks burned his gloves, but smiled as the system blinked green back at him. He whispered, "Hallway unlocked, new path opened." Sector 7 lower rail access. Follow the blue light. Gothi moved again, turning through a narrow path filled with pipes and low ceilings, forced to crawl at times. Ironjack, still carrying Reeve, without complaint, still pushing forward like a mountain. With legs behind them, a blast shook the wall. The prison had begun purging lower corridors, sending flame jets and pressure bursts through old tunnels, trying to burn them out like rats from a vent patch sealed the hatch behind them as the fire reached the door, trapping it inside and forcing it to find another path. They reached the rail chamber, a deep pit with a high-speed lift normally used to move cargo between floors. The platform hung in the dark, suspended by magnet rails and anti-grav locks. Echo moved first, sweeping the chamber from edge to edge, then gave a nod. "Clear for now," she said, her voice the first heard in over 30 minutes. Quiet as dust. Nash gave the order, and they stepped onto the lift. Codewire activated the rail, manually forcing power through backup lines. As red sparks flew from the ceiling, the platform dropped. They descended fast, too fast, almost dangerous, but the longer they stayed, the more the prison adjusted and learned. The AI would begin sending guard units and trap drones to cut them off. It would reroute hallways and gas vents and security turrets. It would not stop, because Red Cell 9 was never meant to be escaped from. But the humans were not prisoners. They were fury wrapped in armor and purpose. The lift slammed to a stop at the base level, just short of the hangar bay where escape was waiting, but the path was not clear. Not anymore. The AI had already flooded the chamber with security units. 6 drones hovered near the bay doors, armed with twin plasma rifles, each one scanning for life signs, movement, energy, and 3 Toleri guards stood at the central terminal shouting orders, trying to override the hangar lockouts. Nash raised a hand. They would have to fight. No more stealth, no more shadows, only speed and precision and fire. The team moved as one. Echo dropped first, landing behind a broken container and taking out one drone with a perfect shot through its optic lens. The explosion lit the dark like a small sun, and the rest of the drone spun toward her. Ironjack jumped from the platform, using a gravity dampener to land without breaking the floor. His massive shield raised his weapon, roaring light into the dark as he drew fire away from the others. Ghostblade and Patch flanked right, taking cover and returning fire with sharp bursts, their rifles humming with each shot. Codewire stayed back, slicing into the hangar door system, trying to force it open, while Reeve stayed low beside him, breathing slow, watching fire dance through the shadows. One of the Toleri guards ran toward a wall panel, trying to activate a defense turret. Nash took him down with 2 shots, then turned to Echo, who was pinned behind a container marked with old cargo signs. She called, "Target above crane arm plasma node. If I shoot it, it drops." Nash looked up, saw the crane arm swinging just above the drones, and nodded. She fired. The node exploded, and the crane snapped from its base, crashing down in a roar of fire and metal, crushing 2 drones and tearing the floor open. Sparks flew and dust filled the air. When the smoke cleared, only 1 drone remained, but its systems were damaged. It spun wildly, firing in random directions. Nash rushed forward, rolled under a burst of fire, and planted a pulse mine on its side, then dove away as it erupted in a silent flash. The hangar was clear. Codewire shouted, "Door open now." "Move." The bay doors groaned and slid apart, revealing the landing pad, and the black ship, rising from below. Ghostborn had returned right on time as planned, its engines whispering, its surface reflecting nothing, its entry silent as Death. Omega moved. Reeve, helped now by Patch, as Ironjack covered the rear, firing warning shots at approaching guards coming from upper levels. Ghostblade laid suppressing fire as the team boarded the ramp, and Echo sent one last shot to disable the door system behind them. The ramp closed, and Ghostborn lifted into the black sky, faster than any pursuit, faster than any drone, faster than fear itself. Inside the ship, Reeve sat in a crash seat, his breath slow, his eyes still watching every corner, but his voice calm. "You risked everything to bring me back." Nash looked at him through his helmet and said, "Only one thing, you are one of us." Then the stars swallowed the ship, and Red Cell 9 vanished behind them, its silence broken, its secrets undone, and its future uncertain. The black ship soared through the void, slipping between sensor lines and deep-skin pulses designed to catch any movement, leaving the prison moon. The stars bent around its hull as Ghostborn engaged full cloak mode, rendering the vessel invisible to even the highest forms of detection across the galactic core. Inside the ship, the silence of space wrapped around the team like a second skin, broken only by the quiet sound of breathing and the low hum of the reactor that powered their escape. Through dark skies, Reeve sat strapped to a seat, his hands trembling slightly as pain ran through his shoulder where old wounds reopened during the escape. But his face showed something else, something more than pain, more than fear. It was focus. It was memory. It was the shape of wrath forming behind human eyes. Nash walked down the narrow corridor, his boots making no sound as he passed sleeping team members and checked the door seals one by one, making sure the ship was still sealed, still safe, still theirs, because in this part of space there were no second chances. Iron Jack stood near the rear hatch, watching the stars pass in silence. His shield leaned beside him, his weapon cleaned and stored, but his eyes remained sharp, the memory of the battle still fresh, still burning behind his mind. Ghostblade sat in the control room, rerouting data channels and analyzing fragments pulled from the prison mainframe. She had stolen more than a map. She had stolen secrets, names, locations, communications. And one data burst tagged with a high-priority alert code unknown to most but familiar to her. And what she saw made her grip the console tighter. Codewire leaned over her shoulder, his fingers dancing across the screen to decrypt faster, to untangle the stream of knowledge that now flowed into their systems. The more he read, the more his face darkened, and then he turned and called for Nash. When Nash arrived, Ghostblade stood and showed him the message in full, a direct order from a Talari High Command Center, months old now, but still glowing with the kind of words that demanded blood and war. The ambassador must not leave the prison under any condition. Execute if extraction is attempted. Full denial protocol authorized. Erase records if possible. Collapse the cell if needed. The consequences must not fall on us. Nash stared at the message as if it were fire burning in front of him, and slowly he understood the depth of the betrayal. This was not just an accident, not just a political arrest. It was a planned erasure of Earth's voice from the Galactic Council, and the attempt had come from more than a local branch. It came from deep within the core of the Talari government. Reeve stood behind him, now having seen enough, having heard enough, and his voice came clear and calm like steel pulled from ancient fire. They wanted Earth to disappear. Nash nodded, his jaw clenched, but his voice, even they failed. Echo entered from the side, holding a datapad linked to external comms. The ship was close enough now to open a tight beam signal toward the Sol system, still encrypted, still hidden, still bouncing through dark channels, but fast enough to reach Earth within minutes. Do we tell them? Nash asked, looking at Reeve. We tell them everything. Reeve answered, not just what they did to me, but what they plan to do to all of us, what they still might do if we stay quiet. Ghostborn's engines pulsed as the ship slipped past the last scan grid and entered deep hyperspace, a path only a few ships could travel, a shortcut across void and time leading straight to the Sol border, where human warships waited unseen, ready since the first sign of betrayal had reached Earth. Back on the prison moon, fires still burned in the hangar, and security bots dragged remains from shattered corridors. The AI continued its cycle, running through failures, rewriting protocols, adjusting variables, trying to learn from defeat, because it had never seen anything like the humans. Talari Command received the escape alert within hours. Panic rippled through their ranks. Quiet but sharp ambassadors gathered in closed rooms, whispering strategies, and blame fingers pointed, and walls rose higher between factions while one name began to echo through the silence like a curse. Reeve is alive. Ships moved in secret across space, some towards Sol, some away, some meant for diplomacy, others for something darker, and the balance of trust shattered like thin glass touched by flame. Meanwhile, Ghostborn broke into Sol space, its cloak deactivated by command code Alpha sent from Earth's defense net, and instantly human ships surrounded it, not with weapons drawn, but with open shields, guiding the black ship home like a lost brother returned from the storm. Nash and his team stood on the bridge, watching the stars fade into the warm glow of their own system, the planets aligned in familiar ways, the blue of Earth shining ahead, and for the first time in weeks their breath felt easy. Earth control open comms, voice clear, strong, and filled with respect. Welcome home. Ghostborn, proceed to secure hangar. Echo 7 medical and debrief ready. Confirm passengers. Nash replied, all accounted for. Ambassador Reeve Is safe mission complete inside the control room of Earth's defense station high above the planet? Generals and diplomats watched the ship land, watched the ambassador step onto Earth's soil once again, and watched as the truth began to unfold in pieces of code, voice, recordings, visual files. All sent from the stolen data buried in the prison. Korea Council meeting was called within hours. Earth representatives demanded a hearing, demanded answers, demanded consequences for what was uncovered, and the galaxy listened because Earth no longer whispered when it spoke. Reeve walked into the council chamber days later, his body still healing, his voice steady, his eyes bright with the fire of survival, and every step he took echoed louder than a fleet. He stood at the center and spoke not of revenge, not of hatred, but of truth, of what had been done, of who had ordered it, and why they had failed. The council fell into silence. The Toleri delegation withdrew from the chamber, their seats empty, their signals muted, their lies exposed before the stars outside. Earth's fleet began to shift formations, not into war patterns, but into defense paths. Powerful, yes, ready, yes, but not yet angry, not yet pushed, only aware and awake and watching. In the days that followed, alliances shifted. Some grew stronger, others weaker. Whispers moved through space like wind, through leaves, carrying tales of ghost born of Omega, of the man who had been taken and the team who had brought him back. They say the stars themselves watched that day as Earth stood tall again, not as a colony, not as a voice, but as a force, as a people who would not be broken, who would never be taken. In silence again, in a quiet room aboard the ship, Nash sat with Reeve, looking out over the blue planet below. Their mission done, but their war not over, their purpose still rising with every dawn. And somewhere in the galaxy, behind shattered moons and secret walls, others watched and waited, calculating their next move, unsure if they would ever again treat humanity as small. For now, Earth had spoken, and the galaxy had listened. The stars above Earth shimmered with the light of movement and power as the human defense armada began silent deployment across border zones. Communication relays echoed across deep space, bouncing encrypted messages from one fleet to another, each one confirming the same message, that Earth would never allow such a betrayal again. Reeve stood in the grand hall of the United Earth Assembly, his voice strong and steady as he addressed leaders, scientists, soldiers, and civilians, his words clear and simple, carrying the weight of what had happened and what would come next. The people listened in silence, and their eyes told him they understood. Nash watched from the shadows of the chamber, not as a ghost, but as a protector, ready if anything should fall out of place. But the day passed without threat and without hesitation. The Earth government passed a motion that shocked even its strongest allies, the creation of the Terran Galactic Response Initiative, a special division with the sole purpose of protecting human interest in foreign space, gathering intelligence, and answering threats with force. If diplomacy failed, its creation meant one thing: Earth would never again wait to be attacked. It would strike first when needed. Iron Jack trained new recruits now inside a black site near Jupiter, his voice loud and demanding as he walked across a line of young soldiers, their faces sharp and eager, their hearts ready for war. He remembered every step he took on the prison moon, and he made sure these new ones would never repeat the mistakes of the past. Ghostblade disappeared from public sight after the mission, her name erased from logs, her location unknown, but whispers told of a new ship moving through shadow space, picking up pieces of forgotten codes and rewriting the rules of deep surveillance. Her presence felt not seen, but real. In every corner of the network, Codewire now led the cyber division of the initiative, a maze of minds and machines running calculations that predicted threat patterns before they even formed. He sat inside a dark room surrounded by screens glowing with the secrets of stars and the paths of enemy ships. He was calm, cold, focused, never letting his guard down. Echo took command of a recon wing, flying deep into uncharted systems, searching for other prisons, for other betrayals, for signs that the Toleri or their allies still plotted in silence. She spoke little, flew fast, and never came back empty-handed. Every mission sharpened her more, every report added to Earth's growing database of threat awareness. As for Ghostborn, the ship that had once vanished from all records now stood proudly docked inside Earth's high-orbit defense ring, its armor repaired, its systems upgraded, and its story whispered among cadets as a legend of survival and strength, a reminder of what humanity could do when pushed to the edge. The Galactic Council had changed in the weeks after the exposure of the ambassador's arrest. Trust broke like thin glass under weight, and every nation now looked to Earth, not with pity, not with caution, but with a quiet respect earned not through words, but through action. The Talari were silent, their seats cold, their channels dark, their embassies locked. Behind security walls and rotating guards, fear hung in their halls, not because Earth would strike first, but because Earth might not wait at all. Inside one of their deepest fortresses, a secret council gathered in darkness, arguing over strategy and survival, their voices low and strained as they debated their next move. Some called for apology, others for retreat, but a few spoke of vengeance, and those words did not vanish. They sank into the room like ash from a dying flame. Reeve now met with the new ambassador to the Andari Republic, a long-standing ally who had offered safe harbor to fleeing Earth citizens during the crisis. Their conversation long and meaningful, and their agreement clear: Earth would stand with its friends but never bow again. He then traveled to Mars to visit the families of the lost agents who had died, trying to save him before Ghostborn's arrival. His hands shook as he spoke their names, each one etched into a memorial wall covered in starlight and silence. The crowd around him mourned not just their loss, but the cost of trust given to the wrong people. Nash sat with him later under a red sky, the wind silent around them, as they shared words not as captain and ambassador, but as men who had seen the worst of space and still returned. Standing, Nash handed him a small device, a beacon hidden inside the Ghostborn ship used to mark their escape route. Keep it, he said softly, someday you may need it again. Reeve nodded, placing it into a pocket near his chest and saying nothing, but understanding everything. In the deep parts of space beyond map charts and safe lanes, ships began to vanish one by one, sometimes without trace, sometimes with signals caught only by Earth's longest range telescopes. Signs of battles fought in silence, of targets taken down before they could speak of war, and no one could prove who did it, but all who listened knew the Terran Galactic Response Initiative denied involvement in all such events, and Earth's leaders spoke only of peace, of unity, of learning from mistakes. But their fleets grew larger and their networks faster and their resolve stronger with each passing cycle. Children now learned of the prison moon not just as a place of injustice, but as a moment when humanity awoke from sleep and chose never to sleep again. Teachers spoke of Ghostborn and its crew, of courage and sacrifice, and the price of silence paid in blood. At night, in the city of New Geneva, lights from skyscrapers danced across the skies like memories written in fire, and Reeve walked alone through its streets, sometimes pausing to look up and wonder what else waited out there behind stars that had not yet revealed their secrets. The galaxy was wide, and its truths deeper than oceans, and though war had not come, yet everyone could feel the edge of it, like the smell of storm before the first drop fell, and Earth stood ready, no longer afraid, and no longer naive. Inside a hidden chamber somewhere on Titan, Nash met with leaders of a joint task force planning a mission into unregulated space, where Talari signals had been detected moving toward an ancient relic site. He placed his hand on a table and spoke only once. We go in silent, we come back loud. The team nodded, each one aware that the age of quiet diplomacy had passed, replaced not with violence, but with strength backed by memory, shaped by fire, forged by betrayal. Somewhere in the shadows beyond council maps, Ghostblade whispered into a communicator, her voice soft as snow but sharp as steel. Rebuilding something, I can feel it. Codewire responded from Earth, his voice steady and clear. Then we find it before they light the first core. In that moment, the story no longer belonged to Reeve alone, no longer to Nash or Ghostborn or even Earth itself. It became the story of what happens when a people who ask only for peace are given chains instead, and the chains were broken and the memory lived on, and the galaxy would never be the same again.